And thanks to Nexus as well for inviting us to participate in the inaugural Global Fleet Summit APAC 2021, hopefully the first of many. Stephen, you pretty much stole most of my thunder there. So the first two slides were an introduction to Geotab, but you did it very eloquently, so saved me about 2 minutes of the presentation. But I have to say, having witnessed and had a look through most of the presentations to date, they've been absolutely fantastic presentations so far. And one thing that stands out is around the amount of knowledge and interest around driver safety. And I know Philip Morris today talked heavily around driver behaviour and how that impacts the businesses. Today, I think it was Paul Elliott from Innovative Group as well, who also talked through an application which monitors driver behaviour from an app, and talked about the costs associated with driver behaviour crashes to a business. It's not just obviously the incident itself, it's the knock-on effect of that as well. And hopefully some of this presentation, which I'm about to give now, will relate to and aligns quite well with what's gone on so far through the presentations. So I'm going to take you through, firstly, a very quick introduction to Geotab. Stephen, as I said, quite eloquently did that already, and crack into the presentation and the learning. So, as you may well have heard from Deepak's presentation earlier, we are an engineering company at Geotab. We have resellers who are our ears, eyes, and feet on the ground, and it's very important, especially when you're entering a region like Asia Pacific, Southeast Asia, and other regions as well, is we understand the local market, which is incredibly difficult when when we might be direct selling to a particular market ourselves without having that knowledge and industry knowledge. So we operate through a fantastic reseller channel that we have, because they have the in-depth knowledge of what the customer wants on the ground in those specific regions. And we're learning very quickly in new regions which we open up. And as Stephen mentioned there, we've recently opened up the office in Singapore, which is our regional hub for Southeast Asia. So very proud to be part of that with Deepak, who is our general manager, who you've seen already during the course of these last 2 days. Originally formed in 2000, so we're now 20 years old, just, and our head office is based in Canada. And if you've been to our virtual booth, you would have heard Neil Corse, our CEO, and the first thing he says in his opening statement is, you can't manage what you cannot measure. And that's pretty much a statement which we all learn and love within Geotab, and it's very, very accurate, because again, over the last few years, about how to understand what my operational costs are, how do I address them? And it's very difficult to do unless you have the intelligence and the data to be able to make those correct decisions within your business. So what do we do and how do we extract that data as Geotab? So essentially, if you can see my screen right now, and welcome to my home, by the way, it's quite not ordinary inviting so many people into my house at once. But Geotab device, as you can see, it's quite a small device and compact device, but very, very sturdy and robust. This effectively plugs into the vehicles, whether it's via a harness or whether it's direct to the actual vehicle itself. And what this device does, it extracts that data via the CAN bus on the vehicle. So the information is actually coming directly from the vehicle, which is different to some other organizations in terms of telemetry and how that works. So, for example, to give you some examples of that is if your seatbelt's in or out as a driver, we might be able to detect if that's the case, if the passengers in the back are wearing their seatbelts, oil temperatures, and if the oil's low, battery, if the battery's low, then we might be able to monitor that within the vehicle as well. So all this intelligent information is coming through this device and through our cloud, into the cloud, and accessible for our customers to look at their own data, report on it, and customize it to their own requirements. as you see in the first sentence of this particular slide, no two fleets are ever the same. Whether they're in the same industry, if they're two last mile delivery companies, if they're two long haul logistics companies, if they're rideshare companies, no two fleets are ever the same. There's always nuances to whatever industry we're talking about. And it's important for us to be able to have a flexible solution to comply with what the customer actually wants. So we could have a fleet of 2 vehicles, we could have a fleet of 200,000 vehicles, for example, but it's the one device and it's the one platform. It's very scalable and very flexible to meet the customer's requirements. Just to talk through a little bit about customizable rule sets as well. Every country, I mean, I specifically look after Southeast Asia, and every country has its own cultures and has its differences in the way it operates. You know, living in Australia as well, that's very vastly different to a lot of countries in Southeast Asia and Europe as well, and North America. So it's very important that the customer has the opportunity to be able to customize the settings that they put on the device to be able to then report on exactly what they need. So for example, to give you some examples of this is idle time, for example. So you might say, I don't class idle time within my fleet until it's half an hour. So if the vehicle hasn't moved for half an hour, 100 meters or more, after 30 minutes, I class this as an idle event. That would be probably okay in places like Manila or Jakarta, or even 1 hour in Jakarta, you might not move that much. But obviously in Australia, you might want to change that down to 5 minutes, because obviously if you're driving around Perth or even Melbourne or Sydney, you know, 5 or 10 minutes idle time might not be, might not be the same as it is in other regions. So important that it is custom to suit the regions the customers in. We also believe there's a power of choice with Geotab as well, and we like to think of ourselves as having the global platform to be able to build your own solution on, essentially. So we have a marketplace, and again, this has been mentioned earlier by Deepak in his discussion around the marketplace and what that brings. So we've got over 200 plus marketplace partners within that ecosystem of partner network that we have, because it's very important that the solution's scalable. What we need as a customer or a business today, we're going to need to evolve as a business, and we're going to have different requirements a year down the line as well. So you're going to need to add to that solution. You might buy the solution today or have the solution in the fleet today to be able to manage and understand where your drivers are, manage that idle time, manage the driver behavior, understand when the vehicle gets to depot A, how long they spend at depot A, and then how long it takes them to get to depot B. All of that is pretty much in your basic solution. But a year down the line, you might want to monitor temperature control solutions within the vehicle if you're carrying food items. You might want to monitor tire pressure monitoring. You might want cameras, front-facing and in-cab cameras as well. So these marketplace partners that we have, imagine it like your Apple App Store or your Google Play Store. That all is available to our customers to be able to access, and a lot of it's already integrated with our solution. So it's just like your iPhone, for example. You're just picking up an app to enhance your user experience, and that's exactly what we do. So very important that the customer has the power of choice to be able to add to that solution, which they know and are confident that already integrates with our solution. Talking about integration and logistics as well, a lot of logistics companies now, and not just logistics companies, last mile companies, also potential rideshare companies have ERP systems which they use. We have some really big relationships which we were part of last year, SAP being one, Oracle another, to be able to integrate with their cloud solutions. So as an Oracle user or as a SAP user or whatever ERP system you use, it's important to know that you don't have to use our platform. You can extract that data via API and have that data in your own ERP, and then use that information, which is the customer's information, as and when they want to, and report as and how they want as well. Some of the pillars to, and we're talking about efficiencies within logistics here as well. So these are the key elements to our solution, and these are the 6 pillars that we have as Geotab, and we tick every one of these boxes. The biggest ones obviously being productivity from the conversation today. You know, customer service times, how long does it take for the vehicle to get to the customers? Identifying unexpected stops. So have they gone straight from point A to point B, or have they stopped for a coffee? Accurate and arrival departure times. So again, you know, sometimes you might be penalized based on how long you're actually on the depot for. I know a lot of ports, for example, start charging if you're on over a certain amount of time. And ports in Southeast Asia are a pretty important area to be able to manage. So there's many different variants to arrival and departure times, and it's important to be able to monitor geo-zone and understand how long that's actually taken, and seeing if you can cut down and increase the productivity. In turn, fleet optimization is also very important. As I said earlier, with the device which connects straight to the onboard computer on the actual vehicle, it allows you to monitor fuel efficiencies, and that's extremely important in a lot of different regions, but we're finding in Southeast Asia, particularly not so much Singapore, but certainly Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, for example, India, more South Asia, that there is issues around fuel theft or pilferage, and it's important that the fleet, although the fuel might not be as expensive as it might be in North America, Europe, etc., it's still a cost to the business. And it's still important to know which vehicles are more fuel efficient as opposed to other vehicles, and which vehicles might have a discrepancy. So then you can report on that discrepancy as well and find out what happened. You can't do that without the intelligent raw data. As I said earlier on, engine diagnostic information, incredibly important, mainly because of preventative and predictive maintenance. Vehicles, if they're not on the road, they're not earning. So no fleet operations manager wants their vehicles off the road for whatever amount of time, if possible. Safety, I'm not going to go too much into, we spoke about that earlier on, but very important to note, monitoring driver behavior is a massive impact to the bottom line in an operation. So it increases your maintenance because you might have to replace more often than not brake pads. You're using more fuel because the driver's driving more aggressively. You're also potentially harming your insurance premiums because from a user-based insurance perspective, you're damaging that for the next possible year. Sustainability, a very, very key pillar to us. Europe, especially for electric vehicles, are growing at a substantial rate. And also Southeast Asia, we're seeing it, especially Singapore and Thailand are the two markets which we've had a lot of interest in. And understanding battery degradation, understanding where the vehicles are, what battery levels they're at, and where the next refuel point is as well. And that helps you manage where you send different vehicles and what jobs they're doing before, at the end of the day, having those vehicles back and the best time to recharge those vehicles. Compliance, Australia, for those people who are listening from Australia, electronic work diaries, fuel tax credits, fringe benefit taxes. All of this is very important to anyone who owns fleets, and it's important that we monitor business private usage, vehicle inspection reports as well, which we'll come on to very later on. And expandability, I've kind of touched on that earlier. So in terms of solutions for logistics and fleet customers, this is a diagram of kind of the 4 steps to the whole solution that we have or always recommend to start off at. So you can see there, confirmed vehicle sanitation. So what we talked about pre-start checks, for example, so you might have an app on your phone, so Geotab Drive, for example, where you'd have an application on your smartphone, which helps identify the driver of the vehicle. You can also have a tag or a sticker which goes on a HID card, for example, which will give you the idea of the person who's driving that vehicle as well. So it's important to note that you can monitor driver behaviour per driver, not just in the vehicle. So if there's a driver ID available, then we're going to monitor. Doesn't matter what vehicle they drive, you'll monitor the actual person's driving behaviour, which is critical to getting that information correct. Important to note, we have had an addition to our application whereby we've got the situation globally right now regarding COVID. So I'm just hearing a buzzer going off in the background. So in terms of COVID, it's very important that the new user to the vehicle is reassured that that vehicle has been wiped down and cleaned. Basically, you can only do that if you do it on the app and notify it on the application itself. Identify risky driving. As I mentioned earlier, this can be done through the device itself, which monitors harsh braking, harsh acceleration, harsh cornering, impacts. But I think as Paul Elliott, I think it was earlier on, mentioned that that's kind of a retrospective. So what we want to do as a business is understand the trend to stop it happening at all, not retrospectively after it's happened. It's important we know what happened afterwards, but if we can identify that high risk driving before an incident occurs, then that is paramount. So it helps with insurance claims as well in understanding of what's happened. So that can be done through either our device or with a partner of ours in conjunction with our device to identify risky driving through in-cab driver analysis. So you can monitor distracted driving. So if the driver's looking away or if they're yawning a lot, it monitors drowsiness by pupil dilation. If someone's eating or smoking in the vehicles, again, if someone's smoking in the vehicles and they shouldn't be, that's an additional cost to clean the vehicle out and make it nice for the next person who comes in the vehicle. Seatbelt not in use, you can actually visually see that as well if you don't get a notification from our device. Forward-facing cameras as well, which helps monitor if the drivers are driving too close to the vehicle in front. So if they're constantly getting harsh braking events, are they tailgating the vehicle in front, and is some sort of training needed? Obviously, this isn't monitored 24/7. The data cost would be out of this world. So essentially what we do is we cut off maybe a minute before or a minute after and during the incident or event itself, and then send that through via also the operator, whoever that needs to go to, will get that information pretty much almost real time to be able to identify what's happened. We also use big data to really look at how we improve our fleets and how we improve our uptime and various different ways we can use big data. Just in this particular instance here, there's a case study with a customer of ours for 70,000 vehicles in their fleet. And their problem was the batteries in the vehicles were basically failing after a certain time. And, in the middle of nowhere, for example, North America is going to be a problem. Australia would probably be a problem because you might be in the middle of nowhere, no cellular coverage, and the battery might fail, and then you're in big trouble. Also, wherever you are, it's a big problem because at the end of the day, you can't use that vehicle and it impacts delivery times, etc., and also maintenance costs. So what we in Geotab have a huge data and analytical team who love solving problems. We as a business, we love solving problems, very passionate about it, and we always will be. And this particular customer came to us and said, this is the problem we want to solve. How can we do it with the 70,000 vehicle data that we've got? And our data analysts sat down and locked themselves away and came up with the answers to the questions which were posed by looking through the data, analysing them, coming up with a common denominator of what was happening, before these batteries failed. So because of the previous measurements that we had, they were intelligently, able to analyse the trend before it actually happened. So once that happened, they monitored and set up a report. And then the report came through directly through as a work order to the maintenance team to say, this vehicle is about 1 week away from having the battery fail. So they could plan to have another vehicle on the road taking that vehicle's job and have this vehicle in very quickly, and then the problem's solved. Other areas of big data which would be of interest to fleet managers: hazardous driving areas, areas where there's been lots of crashes. You probably don't want to put your drivers, especially new drivers, at risk of those areas at certain times of the day as well. Temperatures, local weather. As we know, in Asia, there's a lot of rainfall. There's the rainy season, and again, that adds to driver behaviour. And it also adds to delivery times, because you're not going to be driving as you ordinarily would. There's probably more vehicles on the road because people are taking transport as opposed to using public transport because they don't want to get wet on the way to getting on and off a bus or train, etc. So all of this is possible through our team and our solution. A common problem as well for a lot of fleet managers now is electrification of their fleets essentially. And if I'm a fleet manager now, or a fleet owner or operator, it's a big problem because you don't really know which vehicles you can get rid of and which vehicles you can change to EVs and not impact your business by spending more money by doing it. So it's important, or one of the most important things that we've released as a business in the last certainly couple of years, and the EV team that we have has been working for 11 years on EVs and working on this particular tool for some time. What this tool does, it intelligently looks at your fleet data for the last 2, 3, 4 months, however long you want it to look for, and understands the trips they've taken, the fuel they've used, the kilometres and the jobs they've took, the mileage and what sort of jobs they're doing and the loads they're taking, and takes all that and as a formula from a layman's perspective, essentially, at the end of the day, it gives you a report on which vehicles you can intelligently take out of your fleet or get rid of and change them with EV vehicles without making a loss to your business. It might actually save you money. Now, that is essential now, and we're getting lots and lots of inquiries in terms of this tool because a lot of fleet managers, again, especially in Southeast Asia where I have a bit of experience there, there's tax incentives to be able to move over or transition by maybe 20% by 2024, etc. in some countries, especially some government and utility companies. And how do you do that as a fleet manager? How do you really know you're making the right decision if you don't have this technology to be able to understand, right, I can get rid of these 5 vehicles, I can hit my 20% target and still save the company money because this report outlines it. And it is very much regionally specific. All the formulas are done per country. So it is very much, it's not, it's not just a North American tool, it is a tool for different regions as well. Touching on the EV stuff as well, electric vehicle battery degradation tool is also extremely important. One of the pushbacks to a lot of people adopting electric vehicles is they're scared about the cost of the batteries. How long will they last for and how many times will they have to change them, because it is a big impact to the business. With the tool that we have, it basically looks at various different ways on how the battery is degraded. It could be weather, could be distance traveled, and how that vehicle health is throughout the life or throughout the time of that vehicle. And what we do is we provide a report and an analysis to estimate, how best to minimize that degradation as well. So I know I'm running a little bit short for time, so I still hope we've got some time for Q&As. But one thing I did want to mention as well, which will be extremely important, is the Geotab keyless solution. So this essentially is exactly what it says. So you can remotely open and lock vehicles via Bluetooth from an app. You don't need to be in cell range because it's Bluetooth operated. We're getting a lot of interest from pool car companies, government companies that have a lot of pool vehicles because they don't want to manage the key process. A lot of keys go missing, keys aren't available. Someone's booked a vehicle for 2 hours and the key, no one knows where it is. If the key's lost, it's a good $500, $600 sometimes to be able to replace that key. So this is proving extremely important in what we're doing. Also, a lot of car share companies are interested in this, and we heard earlier about Grab being one of the main sort of ride share companies as well. So we're getting a lot of visibility in areas of this right now as well. It's, as I said, it improves utilization to a certain degree, and it protects your assets as well, because you can remotely unlock or lock that vehicle as well. So helps against theft as well. So in summary, how to increase profits within your operational fleet. So all of what I've mentioned obviously is going to be paramount. The most important thing is to gather as much data as possible, and data which means the most to you. There's a hell of a lot of data which comes through, but it's important that we customize that and report through on what you want. So manage fixed costs, obviously through our analytical tools, we can do that for you. Fuel expenses, monitor the fuel directly from the vehicle so you get that intelligent information. I'm not going to go through each one, as you can see it on the screen there. Increase fleet safety. If you save on your fleet safety and monitor driver behavior month by month on your fleet and your drivers, you're going to be saving costs without a shadow of doubt. Predictive maintenance as well is also extremely important, and through what we have, we can monitor when vehicles need to be in the workshop for those changes, so you don't have downtime and vehicles breaking down, and also vehicles going over their service because they haven't had that schedule to come in. So I'll finish the presentation off today by what sets Geotab apart from any other telematics or provider globally. And I'm not going to go through each point because I'm wary of time as well, but 2.1 million connections globally, more than anyone else, which means we're into more vehicles than anyone else. We're into over 100 electric vehicle makes and models now as well, genuinely connected to from the battery perspective as well. And we also got voted #1 in the world for telematics, which I think was 250,000 connections, global connections or above in the space. And ABI Research has made us #1 for the last 2 years against our colleagues. Stephen, thank you for allowing me to have the presentation and to present on Geotab today, and I'll hand it to the floor.
Sorry, thank you very much, David. Thank you for the presentation. We don't have so much time for questions. Just looking into the chat box, what I see, there is one question, David, from Daniela Chen. She says, "Hi, David. How does your device monitor if the vehicles have been sanitized post-shift?"
Yeah, it doesn't actually monitor itself. It's basically like a pre-start check or an end-of-day check. So you'd have an application on your phone, which basically you'd log onto and log off once your day has finished. And part of that process is going through, and this is all customizable, by the way, so you can put different requirements in there. But certainly now we're getting a lot of questions around, how do I know that vehicle's sanitized before the operational guys get in the next day and then go on their journey. And that's all filled in and then sent over and available in report form on our platform.
Okay. Is there a possibility, for example, when you talk about electrification, you have the electric vehicle suitability program. Is that only for the passenger car vehicles? Is it also for commercial vehicles, for trucks? And the same for the battery degradation? Is it really that you check it with all types of vehicles, or is it at the moment, let's say, just a selection?
Yeah, look, at the minute, we can, as long as we've got the data for that particular region, which matches for the actual formula to come through, we can take a fleet of vehicles, for example, but we just need 1 or 2 months worth of data minimum to be able to have a look at that. So we can look at trucks, for example, but we might not be able to obviously then connect to that truck. As I say, we're up to 100 plus now in terms of electric vehicles we can connect to. Mainly, if I'm honest, 98% of it right now is in the light vehicle space, the commercial light vehicle space, and the rest is a mixture of smallish trucks, and also buses is quite popular as well. So can be any vehicle.
Okay. What can you tell in terms of, let's say, the consolidation between different connectivity partners? It can, for example, be that I am already, or that my local fleet manager is already working with telematics in a certain country or a certain region. How, let's say, yes, how linkable is that with your technology? What is the possibility there to make it as efficient as possible for the end customer, the fleet manager?
Yes, that's a great question. And it's fantastic if that is the case, because the customer is already used to using telematics and understands, what they're using it for. So the hard part of the job is done there. They've incorporated that into their solution. We can bring, as I said earlier, we want to be the one platform that everyone kind of uses and integrates with. So we can have third-party devices coming into our platform. So we do have customers, for example, who use other devices and the data's coming through our platform and showing on there, and then they transition over as and when they need to our devices over time. So you can still get that information. Obviously, it depends on the hardware which is already installed as to what information we can get. So we might not be able to get fuel levels because that might not be coming through the hardware anyway. But if it is, we can show it. So whatever's coming through that device, we should be able to show it on our platform, and then that will link to our analytical tools as well. So often what we see is customers might be using other hardware right now, and then using our platform because it's user-friendly, flexible, and you can add to it. And then over time, they transition over to our hardware as theirs becomes either redundant or needs changing.
Okay, a final question. How specific is the Geotab technology and the app, for example, regarding driver training? So the question is related to, is the app able to immediately recommend a specific driver training for certain driver behavior? So, for example, if a driver is spotted with some kind of harsh speeding or braking, is the technology then capable of immediately suggesting the right action that needs to be taken by that driver and or the fleet manager?
Yeah, another good question. So that would not come through the app. That would come through our reporting tool. So we have something called on our marketplace is a free report which you can download and have on your platform. And essentially what it does, it monitors all the things you just talked about. So again, it's very customizable, but usually what most people have is your harsh braking, harsh speeding, how long they're speeding for as well, which is extremely important. Because you might not care if they're just going 5 seconds over just to get past the vehicle to be safe. But if they're speeding for 5 minutes, you're going to have a problem with that. So it's got idle time, it might have driver behavior in there. But to answer your question, that report comes through and you can see your whole fleet. And that's color-coded between red, green, and amber, usually. Amber being, partially okay. Red obviously being of concern and you need to address that right now, and green being okay. So you'd have your fleet score, you might have your different regional score as well, because you can segregate the fleets by regions and various things. So you can get notifications if someone has X amount of events, and then you can address that. So you can say, I want to know who's my biggest risk in the business for speeding violations right now, and then you can get that information via our reports. which are all Excel and very easy. As long as you can good at using Excel, you can pretty much build your own reports.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, David. David Brown of Geotab. Thank you for the presentation, answering the questions.